Okay, good morning, everyone. As they say famously, the third time's a charm. I really want to begin first and foremost by thanking all of you who have bared with some of the technical difficulties and technical challenges in the Zoom room this morning. Thank you all for tuning in here via Facebook Live. We appreciate your patience. That's why they say 3 strikes and you're out. That means you got 3 chances, and this is our third and hopefully final chance to get it right. But we appreciate everybody's patience and bearing with the difficulties and challenges and sticking with us. I would like to first begin this morning again by just thanking our anonymous sponsor this morning. The sponsorship of this morning's insights into the weekly Parsha, Parshas Beha'aloscha, our weekly time to gather, to study, to learn Chumash together, has been generously sponsored by one of our beloved families in our Boca Jewish Center community in honor of one of our pillars and one of our fabulous and most beloved members, and that is to Linda Golden, who I know is watching this broadcast and learning together with me, as you, Linda, faithfully and always do. And I just want to share what the purpose and the language of this sponsorship is, and that is very simple. As you know, that it's been so difficult for us for these many months to be away from shul, the inability for us to gather together, the inability for us to pray together. But one of the difficulties that has been sometimes easy overlooked, sometimes, is the impact that coming to shul has had on our children. So often we have our children accompany us to the minyanim, they come with us to the services, and they come to the youth groups. But one of the highlights, I know for our shul, and I know for all shuls around the world, is the ability to have time with the candy man or the candy lady. And in our case, we're so blessed. Linda, who is our candy lady, our esteemed and pillar member of our community, is the candy lady. And the children look forward so eagerly to being able to receive a candy from Linda. So in the absence of being able to assemble in shul, so how are kids going to get their candy? How are they going to find that sweetness? How are they going to find their way to the Ezra's Nashim? And from the ability from where I sit to see the gatherings of the children to line up and to get their candy, and then to have to say please and to have to say thank you, to learn midos tovos along the way, to miss that is a heart pain. It's very, very difficult. So what did Linda do in this interim of time? So with her generosity and with her love and her love for the children in our community, is that wanted to be sure that the children did not miss a beat. So spent weeks on end sending through Amazon packaging and other various ways of getting candy, over 25 packages sent to so many different families around our community, and even those extended family members of our community, so the children should receive a candy from Linda, L'Chavod Shabbos, from the Boca Jewish Center community. So this Shir, Linda, is sponsored generously and anonymously by one of your families in honor of you, and in honor of your love, in honor of your generosity. And just to know, as they wrote, that it's just how much you can't imagine it's touched the heart of their child, of their children, actually. And so thank you so much. And it just not only inspires the remarks that I want to share with all of you here this morning, but it also accentuates the idea, the notion that even small things that are easily overlooked underneath the radar, some things that are innocuous, not known to others, but yet have the greatest impact. And even though I might have just ruined that by sharing that here publicly in such a way, but I can tell you this, that the small things that we do, and just even a small candy, you send a package, you send a hello, you send an email, you send a text message, you check on somebody, you visit somebody, even if it's virtually, the impact, the long-lasting level for which it is felt is something that's permanent, and just we don't know the Dorei Doros, the generations that it impacts. So thank you to our anonymous and generous sponsors, and thank you, of course, to our beloved Linda for doing that and being a Kiddush Hashem and inspiring us so very much. Our Parsha this morning, Parshas Beha'aloscha. For those of you who would like to follow along, can follow us by doing so in the Art Scroll Stone Blue Chumash, page 774, and the Hebrew, page 775. We have an action-packed, jammed Parsha, so many lessons and themes, teachings, and inspiration we draw from the Parshios every week, and certainly, no doubt, here in Parshas Beha'aloscha, the story of the menorah, the consecration of the Leviim, the apprenticeship and the responsibilities that come along with being in leadership, the Carbon Pesach, and then, of course, which we're going to focus our attention this morning on the Pesach Sheni, what happens when there are those who are unable to bring the offering in its destined and its time, the simonim, the signs of the travel excuse me, Al Pi Hashem Yisa, Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, the trumpets, the breaking order of the camp, the invitation that Moshe Rabbeinu extends to his father-in-law, to Yisro, to join them along and with their travels, and his decision to not go along with that, what that means, what that meant, and understanding what that invitation might mean for all of us. And of course, to understand just the mun and what the people's dissatisfaction with the mun was, and the despair Moshe Rabbeinu has, and the establishment of the Sanhedrin, and the response to the people, and the new Nevi'im and the new prophets, and the quail that was had, and of course, as the Parsha ends and then is juxtaposed to Parshas Shalach and next week's Parsha, Miriam and the whole Maisa and the story of Miriam and what she spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu and the quarantine and the Badad, that of course those words and that word and that theme of course carries great meaning today, what that means in our Parshios. And specifically to our Parsha and the lesson that we have. So I want to just, focus our attention this morning on one very important idea inspired by Linda's generosity and her givingness and her willing to just, even without fanfare and without being known to the world about this unbelievable behavior. So it's unbelievable to think about the consequence of the things that we can do. So I just want to open up my remarks this morning by sharing with you a story, a short story that was shared by also an extraordinary person, Sivan Rahav Meir, who I think many of you know, who has now been globetrotting around the country, actually around the world. She is an Israeli journalist, primetime news reporter, TV and radio anchor. She is an inspirational speaker about Tshuva, shares her message and her lesson in communities abound and around. For those of you who have yet to hear her speak or to read her articles, no doubt you will be inspired, and I certainly hope, not that this is the formal invitation, but I hope that our Boca Jewish Center community will be able to have the opportunity to welcome Sivan Meir to our community, Amir Hashem, when everybody is going to be back and everyone should just be in good health. Please God. I just want to share with you recently a short story that she shared from a teacher by the name of Avinoam Hirsch. And the story goes like this. The teacher was quoted as saying, "At school, I gave a certificate of excellence to one student." We're this time of year we find ourselves, and it's the graduation season, it's the end of this academic school year, and there's the change of status, where one is going from the first grade to the second grade, from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, from 11th to 12th, so on and so forth. So this is the change of status. So sometimes what you have in the change of status throughout the course of the year, you have the celebration of milestones or accomplishments. And here what this teacher had is this delivery of a certificate of excellence. So I gave a certificate of excellence to one student, but by mistake, I sent an email notification about it to a mother, but it wasn't the mother of the student that was supposed to get it. It was given to the mother of another student. Now imagine that error. Sometimes, if we think twice about before we push send, who it is that is going to receive our notification, who's going to receive our email, is going to receive our text message, our voice notes. Sometimes it works out well that you send it to the right person, and unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out so well. But that's just part of the, imperfection of man that we have to always perfect and work on achieving greatness. But imagine this situation. You have the ability to give this progress report, this certificate of excellence to a student. By mistake, this teacher simply said that by mistake an email notification was sent to the mother of another student. So what did the email say? "Bravo, your student received a certificate of excellence." Now imagine this mother when she opens this up. But the teacher said that by the time I realized my mistake and I tried to delete it, I already got an answer. So it was like fast. And everything's happening in real time. It used to be that you send a message. It could be a few hours until somebody reads it. Now, of course, there's still people that don't sit on their phones and catch the mail or the text or the WhatsApp as it's coming in real time. But for the most part, people are catching those data sound bites pretty quickly. So what happened is before this teacher was able to delete the message, so the mother had already received it. So she already not only got it, but she already answered. What was her response to the teacher? And I quote, "You do not understand what your message did for me." This is what the mother said. "It is the happiest thing that has happened to me this week." So I realized that her child is going to go home, that says the teacher, without really having a certificate of excellence, which he really did not deserve. In fact, the teacher said that day, I even asked the student to leave the classroom because he didn't stop disturbing the class. He was difficult. He was a disturbance. He was belligerent. He was rebellious. He was a difficult student that day. So I had to send the student out. That's what the teacher says. I went to this student because now what's the teacher going to do? The teacher knows that the student's going to go home. And the mother's going to be really happy. Maybe the mother's going to make a special dinner. They're going to have some type of, ice cream, cake, balloons, some type of celebration. Look at this unbelievable email that your teacher sent home. And really, the student is going to be very confused. I don't understand. I was kicked out of class, and that's the type of celebration we're going to have. So this is what the teacher said. Because of the fact that this child was so difficult, I went to him and I told him what had happened. And then teacher, said to him the following thing. Listen, you are the first student, maybe in history, but certainly in my teaching career, to whom I am going to give a loan certificate. I'm going to loan a certificate of excellence. I'm not going to give it to you. We're all familiar with the phrase, the concept of pay it forward, right? What's pay it forward? It means that, okay, it doesn't mean that you deserve it today, but it means that I believe that you're going to perhaps and hopefully earn it and deserve it in the future. I'm going to give you this loan of certificate of excellence. I'm going to lend it to you, and you're going to cash in. You don't deserve it, certainly not today. But I believe, says the teacher, this is it. This is the most important part. I believe that your behavior in the upcoming week is going to justify it. I'm going to give this to you now, celebrating what I believe you're going to do in the future. Unbelievable. So when this student heard that the teacher told his mother that he got a certificate of excellence, and that even though it was like the secret between the teacher and the student that it was on loan, so his eyes lit up, and he said to his teacher the following. Last night, literally, my mother cried to me that I make her so sad. Why? Because she was talking to some of my other teachers and talking to some of the people in the school, and that my mother said to me that all I do is I let her down, and she's so sad, and all I am is a big disappointment. I cause her a lot of tsar. So the student says to the teacher, I am so appreciative. My mother was so sad last night. I'm telling you, trust me, I promise you, I'm not going to let you down. So throughout the following week, this naughty student who had always been belligerent, who had always been derelict, who had always ruined the classes, who had always been disobedient, who was just very, very difficult to a student, that student. So that person, that child, that student, he turned into a malach, turned into an angel. And so the principal, the educational consultants, they came and they asked the teacher if his mother had started to give him some type of, drugs or some type of, discipline or some type of something that now set his course path on straight. So how was that there was now a change in status? And no. So the teachers are like this. No, he's on a much stronger drug. He's on much stronger stuff which burns deep inside him. And the name of that, it's called trust. It's that when you believe in somebody and you trust that somebody's going to be able to perform and to achieve and to accomplish, to reach a milestone and to please God, be in a place that you believe their potential is, you can't imagine what that does for a person. And that's a practical application which I think is highlighted in this story, is that when you believe in a child, and you believe in our children, you believe in your children, when you believe in your talmidim, your talmidos, your students, when you believe even in yourself, with shortcomings, we find ourselves perhaps underestimating what it is that we're able to accomplish, what we're able to achieve. We see the potential in others. We positively reinforce that. We're able to then turn a bad situation, a hard situation, a harsh situation, a disturbing situation, a very uncomfortable situation into something that's very positive. And so not only is it specific to the story of on loan, a certificate of excellence, which then turns into a certificate of excellence ultimately, not only in the specific of the story and the time for which that story takes place, but we'll have no idea. La'olam va'ed, we'll never know how much that teacher impacts this student's life. Maybe this child is going to go through life meeting roadblock and challenges and setbacks, and is going to have the gravel and the gut and the fortitude and the perseverance and the passion to be able to strongly dominate those urges of failure, and then to be able to be a triumphant, successful person in society and in civility, and which is an amazing thing when you think about how much impact this has. Maybe the person who this child's going to marry, maybe the type of children that they're going to raise, maybe the community that they're going to live in, the way they interact professionally and socially, all of that could be impacted by just one small act of being able to A, not only give candy to children who are not expecting candy, they're not in shul, or B, being able to give on loan a certificate of excellence that tells a student, that tells a child, you don't deserve this, maybe you don't deserve this today, but I know that you're going to deserve this. And this is a very important lesson which we see from our Parsha this week. Because when we think about second chances and we think about the opportunities and the potential that we're supposed to think that we have, despite the challenges as they present themselves, this is something that's very deep and a very important lesson, and a lesson that's accentuated even more deeply by the Chidushei Harim. But before we get to his novel interpretation, what I want to do first and foremost is to go through the Psukim and understand something which I know on some basic level many of us have had some experience, have learned a little bit about, and certainly on some level have been inspired. But I just want to share an even deeper a heightened appreciation of what we're going to learn here this morning. And that's what we understand from Perek Tes, from the 9th chapter, Psukim Aleph through Yudalet, the first 14 verses of this chapter, and we learn of the laws of Pesach Sheni, the opportunity given to those who could not offer the Korban Pesach in its proper time, as they were in a specific impure state. They were in a state of tumah, ritual impurity. We know that there's an obligation for a person under normal circumstances to bring the Korban Pesach, the chaymer, the seriousness, the obligation to bring the Korban Pesach be'ito in the right time is Yud Daled Nisan, on the 14th of the month of Nisan, on the eve of Passover, which is the 15th, Tezvav, Nisan. But of course, as the Torah tells us in our Parsha, there was a situation that arose, some type of happenstance that took place that made it then impossible for a group of people to be able to bring the Korban Pesach. And that's what the Torah tells us in Posuk Vav in the 6th verse. There were a group of men who were ritually unclean. And the reason why they're ritually unclean, which is going to become more important as we develop this thought a little bit later, is because they were in contact with a dead person. There was tumas hames. There was impurity because of their contact with a dead body. So what happens? So they were not able to bring the Korban Pesach by Yom Hahu on this day, because they knew that even though they wanted to, they desired it. They came to Moshe and they came to Aaron, and they're like they're not sure what to do. They know that they can't do it. So what's the halacha? What do you do if there's some type of situation that arises? Sometimes we're thrust into a scenario that's uninvited or maybe unexpected, and now we have to transition, we have to pivot. And when we have to pivot, sometimes that makes us uncomfortable, in the world of just not sure what to do, but even if we figure it out, it's like it throws us off our equilibrium. So what happens? They came before Moshe Rabbeinu and they plead their case. Here's what happens. There's a tumah, there's an impurity, a tmei nefesh adam that fell upon them. So now they're not sure what they do. Now they plead their case. Pasuk Zayin, vayomru anoshim hahema. So these people, they came and they plead their case. They say, okay, we're impure because of tumas hames. Lama nigara, and these are the two most important words of this whole exchange. Lama nigara means, why should we be excluded? Why should we be left out? Levilti kriva es karban Hashem b'moado b'soch b'nei. So why should we not have the opportunity to bring the Korban Pesach to Hashem in its right time with b'soch b'nei Yisrael, with everybody else? We have such a desire, such a yearning. It's unbelievable, actually. Lama nigara is an incredible call. It's not only a description of a type of person, but it's a spiritual description that describes a person that is so uneasy and unsettled and unhappy if there's something that's taken away from them in the world of the ability to achieve and to accomplish something spiritually. So that means Lama Nigara, it's not the idea, the notion that sometimes if you feel like somebody's exempt, somebody's putter, a person has no obligation for whatever the reason, you know what happens? More often than not, people say, okay, I'm putter, I'm exempt. What do you want from me? I have no obligation. So I celebrate that. I have no need to like petition my case to whomever that case might be petitioned before. I want to do it either which way. I want to do it anyway. Lama nigara. I don't want to be left out. I want to do it. I want to be included. So many times people just say, if I'm putter, if I'm exempt, so then I'm exempt. Imagine, take for example, there's probably, I know the Gemara tells us that there were no 2 days as happy as the days of Tu B'Av and Yom Kippurim. These are the happiest days in the Jewish calendar. Gemara in and of itself meant to be explained, not for this time. But here's what I would tell you: that I think there's a third day, and a proverbial third day of the happiest days. What's the happiest days? When somebody comes to shul, and they somehow unexpectedly now hear there's a chassan in shul, there was a bris in the shul. There's some type of reason that Tachanun shouldn't be recited. And my goodness, if it's a Monday or a Thursday, there are cartwheels. It is a simcha gedola ad ma'od. In fact, the celebration for some people, for them to not say Tachanun is even longer than the amount of time it would have taken them to recite the Tachanun of itself. For some reason, there's such a celebration. It's not the pshat like, there was a guy once that was at a minyan and there was no Tachanun that was recited because it was a chassan. The guy, he came over and he says, Rabbi Gibber, you don't understand. What kind of tefillah was just taken away from us? Now, obviously, there's an exemption, and obviously, there's a celebration, there's a chassan, but he was like devastated that there was no long tachanun. It was a Thursday, that there wasn't the tachanun that he could say, the tefillah, the tchina, the supplication, the heartfelt tefillas that are captured in the essence of those tefillas. It was like heartbreak for me. Like wanted lama nigara. Like most people don't really do that. So that's what was really highlighted by what they're telling Moshe Rabbeinu. They plead, they're begging, they're cajoling Moshe Rabbeinu. Please, like, why should we be left out? We can't bring it at the right time. We're tamei, we're impure. Okay, we get it. But so we want to be one with the people. We want to be one with everybody. So this is the Rebbeinu Shalom says that Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu that even though these people cannot offer the carbon on the 14th of Nisan together with the rest of the nation, there's sometimes things that are just uncompromising. There are just sometimes things that you just can't change the reality. It just is what it is. But nonetheless, the Rebbeinu Shalom, with the Chesed Hashem, with the Chesed, the goodness, the loving kindness, the benevolence that Hashem constantly showers upon us. So he says to Moshe Rabbeinu that they could and should bring the carbon 1 month later on the 14th of Iyar. 1 month later on Yud Daled Iyar. And this just brings to mind, obviously, parenthetically, but not that much different, is the whole notion of tashlumin. What's tashlumin? Tashlumin means that let's just say you had a mishap, some type of incident, some type of unexpected happenstance. You missed shachris for whatever the reason. So assuming it was legitimate, so we have the ability al pi halacha to make up that missed tefillah through the auspices under the rubric of tashlumin. So that means you get to mincha. So you daven 2 shmoneh esrei at mincha. The first one is for the obligation of mincha. You take 3 steps back, and the second mincha that you daven is the mincha of the shachris that you missed. That's the tashlumin. But not only is that chesed, a benevolence that we're given, that we have an opportunity, that we have a chance to do, to perceive, to do initially, but that's also true in a situation where a person even where a person has the opportunity, let's just say you miss an Erev Shabbos mincha. So let's just say you miss mincha on a Friday afternoon, you come into Shabbos. Tashlumin also allows a person to daven 2 Shabbos Friday night shmoneh esreis, and that means you're davening 2 Shabbos shmoneh esreis, one that's going to count for Shabbos, and another that's going to count for Friday afternoon. It's just charity. It's just chesed. It's just benevolence. It's just we're blessed. We're lucky. That's what it comes to mind. That meaning al pi din, al pi halacha, technically speaking, without this dispensation, halachic permissibility, it wouldn't be allowed for us to daven 2 shmoneh esreis. But the Almighty gives us such a chance, assuming that's legitimate. That does not mean you can miss shachars from Sunday through Thursday and Friday, come to shul and say, I'm going to hit like 7 shachases, and this way I'll be able to make up for the things that I missed. That's not what it means. It means that it's legitimate, assuming that it's with right reason, follows under the categories and laws as they're set forth. So in a similar vein, so then the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Moshe Rabbeinu there's going to be a way for these people, even though they missed it the way they're supposed to do it, but it's not their fault. So says the Rebbeinu Shalom, Daber al b'nei Yisrael lemor, ish ki yeh tami lenefesh, or derech rechoka. So says the Rebbeinu Shalom to Moshe Rabbeinu, any person who is tamei nefesh, any person who's unclean because they became in contact with the dead, or as the Rebbeinu Shalom, that person is b'derech rechoka. Derech rechoka means that they're physically at a distant journey, that they're far away. That doesn't mean you decided to take a Disney cruise on the eve of having a biblical obligation like Carbon Pesach. This means that there was some type of mishap, some type of difficulty, some type of strain or stress that required the distance of you being away and being far, and therefore that meant that you weren't able to bring their carbon. So that's the derech choka. Lochem u'ledorasechem, for these people, for you, in that time for which Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to the people, u'ledorasechem, for the generations that would follow, meaning us. So those people, Vasa Pesach LaHashem, you're going to be able to bring a carbon Pesach. Phew. Now I have the opportunity and the ability to fulfill my obligation. I can't do it on Yud Daled Nisan. However, B'chodesh Hasheni, says the Pasuk Yud Aleph, verse number 11, if you're following along. Perek Tes, Pasuk Yud Aleph. B'chodesh Hasheni ba'arba asar yom, in the second month, on the 14th day, Ben ha'arbaim, in the afternoon. That's, of course, the 14th of Iyar, Yaso. So you can do it on Matzah Samarim Yechlu. There are those who celebrate the day not just because we don't say Tachanun, but actually eat matzah and bitter herbs. And in the time when the Beis Hamikdash was there, so that was the offering. That's what they did. That was the Pesach Sheni. That was something that was observed practically and correctly. So Kishiyava Beis Hamikdash b'meir of Yameinu, we should have Amir Hashem the practice to bring carbon Pesach beito of Izmano, and we should have the ability to bring carbon Pesach for those who were derech choker to make Lenefesh on Pesach Sheni. Good. So that's the din. So we see that that's the law. Those are the psukim in Chumash that we're familiar with. We understand the concept, the idea, the notion of second chances. We understand the idea that a person who's unable to bring it when it's supposed to be brought, there's another opportunity for a person to bring. But I want to share with you a very important insight. and a practical application, even on a deeper level, that brings out the soul, that brings out the neshama shared by the Chidushei Arim. The Chidushei Arim, for those who are unfamiliar, was the first Ger Rebbe, Rav Yitzchak Meir Alter, and he was known as the Chidushei Arim. He was an erudite. He wrote extensively on Shas and Chumash. He wrote beautiful, powerful, insightful. Beside being a Rebbe and a Manig, a leader, was a great Chacham, a great scholar. So he noted that there's Psukim, there's Pshat, there's Rashi, there's commentary, there's the Mefarshim, but there's also a great amount of symbolism. And there was, as he writes, there was a great symbolic significance to the story that's happening. And he explains that oftentimes in life what happens is that a person finds himself or finds herself in some state or some version of impurity. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the impurity that is referred to in the Chumash, that a person's in contact or touches a corpse, a mace. But it means that there's some state or some version of impurity that person feels on a particularly low spiritual level, where a person feels that they're not able to serve the Ribono Shel Olam on the same level either as other people or on a level that they would better prefer for themselves. You have a time what we call you're in a rut, and you feel like things are just like not going well. When things are going well and you're getting up early and you're going on your run and you're learning the Daf Yomi and you're, doing your chesed and you're giving your charity and you're spending time with your children and you're, helping around the house and you have good relations and shalom bayis and X, Y, Z, when things are zipping along the way they should be, hopefully, and they ultimately would be, so then things feel good. It's mitzvah goreres mitzvah. There's one thing leads to another thing, and you're just like flying high. But unfortunately, what happens is that's not always realistic for everybody or anybody. So what happens is that you trip, you stumble, you fall. And one thing goes out of equilibrium, and another thing goes out of equilibrium. And then you have a spiritual low state. You feel far, you feel rachak, you feel b'derech rechoka, not just physically derech rechoka, you feel spiritually rachak. You feel distant and you feel difficult because at the end of the day you feel far. You feel distant from the Ribono Shel Olam. And so therefore what you have is you have this image that other people are doing things that you should yourself be doing, which might or might not be true, but let's assume it's true. Or you feel like there's something better than you yourself. You could do better. It's like on loan, that certificate of greatness. But sometimes we don't loan that certificate of greatness to ourselves. We're our harshest critics. And so sometimes when we fall into that hole, we trip and we stumble. So it's very difficult for us sometimes to get up. And that's the challenge, says the Chidushei Arim. So whether it's due to mistakes that we've made, we've stumbled, opportunities which we've squandered, time that we've wasted. I mean, a person thinks about how much time a person wastes today. We're a world that's more connected than ever before, but sometimes like you start a project at one given time and you blink your eyes and you realize like it's like 3 hours later and you didn't realize how quick time passed, and you think to yourself like, what did I do in those 3 hours? And sure enough, you realize you were on your devices and you were on a phone call and you were just doing a whole host of different things that maybe you wasted so much time. Like how much time do we maximize when we're actually doing something? So we're limited in what we're capable of achieving in the present or in our current position or in our circumstances that we find ourselves. We feel that we're lacking. So says the Chidushei Arim, this novel and very important idea, that's the story, that's the lesson of Pesach Sheni. It teaches that while we must always strive to serve the Almighty perfectly, we have to always desire to do it in its ideal standard fashion. We can nevertheless never, ever, ever despair or give up or fail to think that there's another level, that there's another opportunity, there's another way of doing it. Never despair or give up, either when we fail, when we have a setback, or when it's not possible. Sometimes there are situations that are just not possible. And by the way, I say this, I think that while we're all in transition, at least in our community, and I'm sure communities around the country and certainly around the world, transition back into our shuls, one of the things that's been difficult for so many people over these past many months is that, to be away from organized tefillah, to be away from tefillah b'tzibur, to be away from the kehillah, from the community, from the building, either on the outside and then eventually, on the inside. So people feel down, people feel sad, people feel despondent. They feel like, I had an argument with somebody. It was a L'Shem Shemayim argument. Person was saying that they want it so badly, like Lama Nigara. Why should we be left out? They want to be able to come to the synagogue. They want to be able to daven, and really, the circumstance didn't allow it. And for those people that still to this day, even though there are shuls and ours included that are opening up in various versions of how and limitations and rules and protocols and guidelines, etc., there's still some people that aren't able to still come, and that's your mitzvah. That's what you have to do. No different than anybody who has to do anything, to preserve life and to be safe and to be in line with Das Torah, to be and fulfillment of Ratzon Hashem. We have to always remember there's something called Ratzon Hashem. And Ratzon Hashem means that sometimes it's not possible. And if it's not possible, it doesn't mean that it's not doable on some level. We have to also say Lomanigar. It says the Chidush Harim. Like, we still have to feel a desperate longing, a desire to achieve greatness and to find a way to still serve the Rebbeinu Shalom even in our current state. Even if that means knowing that Hashem will love it, well, even though it means that we're unable to do it the way we want to do it, but we do it in the current state that we're in because we know something rock solid, bedrock, uncompromised. The Rebbeinu Shalom lovingly accepts the sacrifice we're capable of making in our present condition. That means if there's something that we can't do ideally, we're going to never stop yearning for it. But we're not going to think that because we can't do it in our ideal fashion, ideal version, that we can't do it at all. Our responsibility is to achieve the best we can under our current situations, under our current circumstances, no matter what. Even if it was our own impurities, even if it's our own mistakes, even if it's our own fails, or even if it's just life situation, if it's life circumstances, life happenstance, which brought us to our current, far from ideal realities. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think it's very important to bolster the idea that even when things aren't ideal, it's ideal. And there are many different interpretations of how we're supposed to think of that. But basic and first and foremost is that if it's Ratzon Hashem, if that's the will of God, and even if it's not ideal, let's make the best of it. There are a number of people I've spoken to have said to me, Rabbi, while the shul's in transition, and I'm speaking, I'm sure, on behalf of other Rabbanim and other shuls around the country, that while there's a great zealousness and a great excitement to be able to reacclimate back into organized tefillah, so there have been a few people that have said to me that, Rabbi, let's just wait until the shul can get back to itself, until it's full glory, and we'll be able to have everybody assembled, and men, women, and children, and there's no immunocompromise, there's no limitation of certain age population. the shuls will be packed again, and we're going to have the energy of our davening as we've always had it, and it's going to be great. Let's just reconstitute it then. And while I dream of that, and I hope for that, and I yearn for that, and I expect that and pray for that, obviously, I think there's a very important lesson of doing it even in this stage, because even though it's not the ideal version, it's still a version. And a version is, the definition says the Chidush Harim of what the Pesach Sheni is. It's not the ideal version, but says the Rebbeinu Shalom, okay, this isn't the lesson that if you can't do it in the ideal version, you shouldn't do it at all. You got to do something. It's worth doing something. It's worth making a lemonade out of lemons, as they say. It's worth trying to make the best of a situation, whether it's because of our own failures, our own mistakes, life situations. Nobody invited this, coronavirus pandemic into our world. This is something that happened because it was the Ratzon Hashem, and therefore we have to make it good, and we have to figure out how to be resolute in even this transition period of time, not to unwind and undo all of the goodness and achdus and togetherness and unity that was felt, now to have fractions and factions and disparate different parties that are now unable to be together because of just the failures and mistakes. But no, even though it's not ideal, let's make it ideal. Let's make it that it's the best version of whatever it could be here and now. And I think this message might also be reflected in the Gemara's discussion concerning the identity of this group of impure individuals in the Pesach Sheni story. As we mentioned, the way they made their petition, the way they made their claim, they made their case presented to Moshe Rabbeinu is that they were, l'tomei nefesh, that they were impure because of their involvement of those who had died. So that's why they were impure. So who are these people? So according to one view, one mandamah that's quoted in the Gemara Maseches Sukkah Daf Chof Hey, so the Gemara says on folio 25 that these individuals were very specific individuals who are tamei for a reason. Why? Why were they tamei? So the Gemara says they were tamei because they were carrying the coffin of Yosef at Tzaddik. And this, you have to remember, was the Bnei Yisrael that brought him the bones, the Atzmos Yosef, from Mitzrayim, from Egypt, to Eretz Yisrael, and the reason was so that Yosef should be buried in Eretz Yisrael, as per the promise, and that's what should be. So it has been said, to understand this Gemara, is that the connection between Yosef, Hatzadik, and the laws of Pesach Sheni is not incidental. I mean, the fact that they were busy with his bones, with his atzmos, it's not like by chance, nothing by chance. In the Chumash, of course, we know. And I would suggest that maybe, as it's been suggested, perhaps the central defining characteristic of Yosef's life, actually, his whole totality of existence of his life, is his making the most of even far from ideal circumstances. This is a very important lesson. That's who Yosef Atzadik was, and that's who these people were busy with, his body, with his arm, with his bones, because he himself made the best of the situation far from ideal circumstances. Of course, we all famously know, cruelly banished from his home, forced to work as an Eved. He didn't allow and wallow in self-pity and helplessness and hopelessness, but he worked hard. He achieved. He served his Adon, his master, as the best he could. He earned his trust. He earned his admiration. He was imprisoned on false charges for attempted rape. He took responsibility for his other inmates. He's assigned a role of assistant warden, the capacity which is able to interpret Chalomas, dreams, of course, eventually leads to becoming the Egyptian viceroy, second in command, and of course, the rest is history. So even under the darkest and the dreariest and the most discouraging circumstances imaginable. I mean, it wasn't like this happened like with a short-lived time. There's over years that this is so difficult. He's in a pit and he's in a dungeon. So nonetheless, Yosef Atzadik, he's able to achieve greatness because he's able to make the very best of his ability rather than despairing, rather than having yush, having helplessness. And I think this is a very important lesson indeed, as we've said, of the Pesach Sheni. So if we're unable to offer the ideal sacrifice, then the Ribono Shalom wants us to offer the second best sacrifice. And dare I say that the second best sacrifice for the people that have to offer it, it's their first best. Because if you weren't able to, or someone that threw you under the bus, or set you back, or put you in a compromised state for whatever the reason, so it's very easy for the Sitra Acher, the Yetzer Hara, to shackle you down, to hold you back, to hold you away from your greatness, from your potential. No, that a person has to unlock that. A person has to unchain the shackle of that being held back, and the second best sacrifice now becomes his best. There's no reason to fall into depression. There's no reason for a person to fall into despair. When our impurity prevents us from being the people we had dreamt and aspired to be, we have to continue to dream. We have to continue to inspire. We have to be and continue to be inspired and to aspire to be the very best that we can under our current circumstances, recognizing that this ultimately is all that can ever be expected of us. We shouldn't sit home and wait for the best, because we are part of the story that's going to make the best. We are going to hopefully please God by understanding that with our resolute passion and ability to just understand our own potential and seeing the greatness in others, so that's the best version of ourselves. So we too can learn to view our current situations differently, and we can learn to make the most of our lives within the limitations of our own situations. And that's true of how we learn Torah and certain throwaway increments throughout the day, which are not throwaway. That's true of how we just give candies to people, as I've said. That's true of how we inspire people to just think that they can be great. That's true of even the small, seemingly meaningless things, which are really very meaningful. This little message that we've continued to share in and about. And I think this is also true when you think about just something small, even as it relates to your tefillah. It's like, how powerful is my tefillah? What will my davening do? I'm reminded of the famous story of Natan Sharansky, famous person, which I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard of. So there was once a situation where somebody was in the bakery with Natan Sharansky in Yerushalayim, and they were standing in line, and she happened to have noticed that she was standing behind Natan Sharansky. So she didn't know what to do with herself, Should she pull out her phone? Should she take a selfie? Should she ask for an autograph? Should she just say shalom? Should she let him just be a regular person, order, his baked goods and let him go? So she told him, she got his attention. I guess they made eye contact. So she told him that she had just cited from his book in a class that she was teaching in Sefer Tehillim. I mean, she was a teacher, and she was excited to tell him that there was something that he had imparted to her by way of his book, and she gives a Tehillim class. So therefore, she was very excited to share that. So that his inspiring story of how he had kept a tiny book of Tehillim with him at all times, even when he had to struggle with the authorities to get it back. That's part of, what she was sharing in this Tehillim lesson. Like, Tehillim is so powerful. Look, here's the story of Natan Sharansky, who kept a small Tehillim at all times with him. And even when he had to get it back, and it wasn't easy, so that was inspiring. So at that point, Natan Sharansky smiled at her, reached into his shirt pocket, and he pulled out a tiny palm-sized tattered book of Tehillim. The very book of Tehillim that he wrote about, the very book of Tehillim that she was sharing with her class. So stunned, this woman, she said to him, "Do you carry that wherever you go? Like, that's not just like an heirloom that you have in some closet somewhere? Is that something you carry with you wherever you go?" So she said, that to him. So he said, no, he didn't even pause. He didn't skip a beat. And he said to her, actually, I don't carry it with me. It carries me. It's not that I carry it, but rather it carries me. And that's it. The idea that there's situations that are less than ideal. So you say it to him, you have something that's with you. It carries you, it brings you, it holds you, and it's something that's meaningful. And I'll just, share what I think is an important part of this, which is there's a very interesting Ramban in this week's Parsha also that focuses on the pattern of the Jewish people traveling and camping in the wilderness, as was dependent on the movement of the anonim, of the clouds that accompany them. As the pasuk says, "V'yesh asher yeh ha'onon me'erev ad boker, v'nala ha'onon ba'boker v'noso yomam v'layla v'nala ha'onon v'noso." That sometimes, as the Chumash tells us, the cloud would be there from evening until the morning. Sometimes it would rise in the morning, and they would travel, or for a day or for a night, and the cloud would rise, and they would travel. Al pi Hashem yisa, al pi Hashem yach, and of course we're all familiar. So the Ramban writes that it was not uncommon for the Jews to arrive at an absolutely undesirable place in the desert. So at times, you can imagine, think about your own travels, they wanted to leave a place immediately. Got there and they're ready to go. But they would need to stay because the Anonim, the cloud, stopped over the Mishkan, over the tabernacle. So similarly at other times. So they arrived at a lovely place, a place that they would have been very happy to stay, the Taj Mahal. They were exhausted and they were happy to take a shower, to put their feet up, smoke a cigar, open up a chumash, to stay for a while. But what happened? Only after 2 or 3 days in such a place, the cloud began to move and they had to continue their travels. That's what it means. Al pi Hashem yiso, al pi Hashem yachnu. So the Ramban adds that sometimes they would come to a spot, the cloud would stop, they would all unpack, and then the next morning, they after they finished unpacking all their belongings, they put their shirts and their socks and their blouses and their suits. They put everything where they needed to go. They unpacked everything, and now they finished unpacking. The cloud would be on the move, and they'd have to repack everything and start traveling again. Imagine such an experience. You have a summer vacation. Your bags are packed. You're with your children. We all know what it's like and what's involved in going on a trip. Everything's loaded in the car. Everything's loaded on the plane. Everything, yeah, with great effort. Everything's tied down. Everything's prepared. And then we finally get there. You get to the hotel. You unpack. You're ready to go. You're Airbnb. And now you're ready to stay for a couple of weeks. You're ready to, get now acclimated to your new surroundings. And that's what the pasuk says. What does it mean? When the cloud lingered on the Mishkan many days, they would remain. So what happened? The Bnei Yisrael would maintain Shamru Bnei Yisrael Mishmeres. They would maintain Mishmeres, the charge of Hashem. They wouldn't journey because that's if the cloud was there. So that means that imagine what would happen. So either they would be able to stay in a place where that they didn't necessarily want to stay, or they'd have to leave a place that they'd want to stay. And obviously there were times that they were able to stay in the places that they wanted to stay. But it didn't matter. The concept and the lesson of Al Pi Hashem Yisrael, Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, when Hashem says go, you go. When the cloud moves, you move. When the cloud lingers, you stay. The travels weren't easy. They were a tremendous nisayon. They were a tremendous test. But obviously the obvious question in the Ramban, what he's addressing is, we know that the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't, make the people jump up for no reason. What was the point of making them sojourn in the desert so arbitrarily, so burdensome? It was so difficult. What's the point of that? So a very important lesson that Rabbi Dessler in the Michtav Meliel explains, based on this Ramban, that the time in the Midbar, the time in the desert, was a very important time. It's actually part of why it's not coincidental. The commentaries explain that the reason why Parshas Bamidbar is the Shabbos, the Parsha we read always before Shavuos, is because we have to make ourselves like a Midbar. When we make ourselves in the wilderness, in the desert, there's the place that was the facilitator of where Kabbalah Torah, where the acceptance of the Torah happens readily, unencumbered, undistracted, and that Midbar. So the time that Bnei Yisrael was in the Midbar, this is a period when the Bnei Yisrael received much of the Torah, of course, as we all know. But there's a very important lesson, says the Michtav Meliel, says Rav Elio Dessler. It says, perhaps what the Rebbeinu was trying to teach us is it was the lesson that we must learn Torah, and we have to perform mitzvos in spite of any outside conditions. It doesn't matter what the circumstance is. That's the lesson here of the Pesach Sheni, is that any situation that you're in, many of us say, if I only had a little more free time, or if I only didn't have to worry about so much about making a living, or if I once things settle, I'll be able to retire, I'll be able to have this, that, anything that's going to fall in line in life that's going to, distract me, so I'll wait till another time. If we did not have to worry about this responsibility or that responsibility, so then I'd be able to sit down and learn and daven and pray like we should without rushing through. There's somebody that I know who waited till he retired to get into learning. And believe me, he's very, very into learning. He's been through Shas one time. He's been, through Chumash cover to cover with all the Rashis. He uses his time very wisely, but he's in tremendous pain. And the reason why he's in tremendous pain is not because he is now, a newfound life that allows him to learn, freely and to do the things that he always, quote, dreamt to do. But the pain that he has is that he wishes that he had started doing this a little bit earlier. The things that he's like having to catch up, and in the way of life that he would have had just been different, would he have been able to commit himself to such a lifestyle. Obviously a little bit different because as a professional earning a livelihood, as a physician, the calls of being on call and the call to duty, so obviously that would have been different. But nonetheless, that wasn't, that's not the way it's supposed to be. Life doesn't work that way. Life is always full of disturbances. Life has always turbulence in it. Life always has its challenges. There's always things to think about, things to consider, things that take us off our tracks, things that are less. It's in the movies where somebody thinks you're just going to be able to retire and no responsibilities, and you're like right off into the sunset, and you're going to be able to sit and learn all day with no distraction, no disturbances. We should all have that. It should all be good. But we're not living in Gan Eden. There are financial challenges. There are problems with parents. There are problems with children. There's always problems. There's things. And we have to necessarily call them problems. It's just life. And that's what life is. And that's what the Torah is teaching us through the travels in the Midbar. And that's what the Torah is teaching us with Pesach Sheni. Life in the desert wasn't easy. It was no picnic. Life has to nonetheless continue. It's not easy to live through a pandemic. It's not easy to live with limitations. It's not easy to live with a mask and social distancing. It's not easy. And even though the world seems to be saying like, I'm finished with masks, I'm finished with the social distancing, I'm finished with this, that, the other thing, let's be careful not to do the things before we're supposed to do them, being overzealous to achieve a place and a destination which we're hoping to get to, overzealously before it's meant to be there, because all that can happen is if we do things the wrong way, is that we're going to be set right back to a place that we don't want to be. So we have to be responsible and conscientious, and we have to accept and adapt and be willing to understand that second best sometimes isn't even second best. It's actually first best, assuming we accept that and do that. It was no picnic in the Midbar. So in other words, what we're saying is we have to continue learning, and we have to continue living as an honest and as a dignified Jew in spite the surroundings and despite the conditions, no matter what the situation is. We Baruch Hashem. So Baruch Hashem, thank God. So despite what other people have had or what other people have, so Baruch Hashem, we have to count our blessings. There are people that lived through much harder times. There are people that had such as talk to a Holocaust survivor. Talk about what their conditions were. Things that were harder than anything we could ever imagine. So they learned Torah, they did mitzvahs in spite of difficult conditions. They were able to persevere and do things that maybe we should emulate and try to aspire. And this is the lesson of the Anonim. This is the lesson of the Pesach Sheni, continuing to exist. Well, not everything is provided on a silver platter. Well, not everything as we think it should be. Everything that we want it to be in this way, it will get there. And sometimes it is, even though we can't do it be'ito in the right time, in the right way, as we remembered, as we should on Yud Daled Nisan, Yud Daled Iyar. That's also a date. That's also something. And gives that to you? Not some rabbinic court, not some cohort of oisvavs. Chas v'shalom, gave us the opportunity. The Ribono Shel Olam b'chleido v'atzma, the Ribono Shel Almighty God gave us the opportunity. He says it's okay. So if it's okay for the Ribono Shel Olam, then my goodness, it should be good for us. Let's not be smarter than the Ribono Shel Olam. Let's not think that we know more than the Ribono Shel Olam. We can't be smarter. We'll never be smarter than the Ribono Shel Olam. We are not. Let's not be firmer than the Ribono Shel Olam. Come on. Let's follow His, not ours, His directives. Life, Torah, mitzvos has to continue. So I just want to end this by sharing with you a beautiful story shared by the Maggid himself, Rabbi Pesach Krohn, in his book, The Maggid at the Podium, where he shares a beautiful story about the Rav Matisyahu Solomon. He says the following, the lesson is profound, and it certainly brings us all together, just noting what the source is and knowing what's supposed to inspire us and knowing what we're supposed to keep in mind. So he says that there's a story that happened many years ago in the town of Gateshead, in the northern part of England. He says there was a Malamed, a teacher, who was walking through a park with one of his Talmidim, one of his students, and the student was a 10-year-old boy. It was early fall, and the foliage was breathtaking. The leaves were red, the leaves were green and orange and brown. When the seasons change, how beautiful it is. So the Malamed, the teacher, stopped and he asked the boy to look at one of the beautiful multicolored leaves that was lying on a park bench. So the boy looks at it and he's like, wow. You see his eyes like popping out of his head. Looks beautiful. So that leaf says the Malamed to the boy, that leaf, it thinks it's free because, right, it's free. It's on the bench. It's by itself. It thinks it can fly wherever it wants to. It can go wherever it wants. It can pitter-patter this way or pitter-patter that way. But it doesn't realize that in 2 days, the leaf is going to wither and it's going to die. So the Rebbe said to the Talmud, you know why? You know why it's going to wither and die? Because it is no longer connected to its source. Only the leaves that are still connected to the tree can continue to live, to blossom, to flourish. So the Rebbe looked at the young boy and said, Talmud, my young child, I want you to remember this for the rest of your life. The Pasuk tells us, Eitz Chaim hi l'machazikim b'bo, that the Torah is a tree of life for those who hold on to it. Pasuk in Mishlei, Perik Gimel, Pasuk Yud Ches, 3:18. There are those who think that if they do not uphold the Torah, that they will be free to eat what they want. They'll be free to go where they want. They'll be free to watch what they want. They'll be free to do whatever that they want. But that is the beginning of spiritual death. The only ones who have a life of meaning and growth are those who are connected to the source. And that source is the Torah HaKadesha. That little boy later said to Rabbi Krohn that this made a tremendous impression on him many years later. And that, of course, is Rav Matisyahu Solomon, the Mashgiach of the Lakewood, the former Mashgiach of Lakewood Yeshiva. He said that this lesson about the importance of connection to the source became the essence of his life, and it should be the essence of our lives as well. And we have to remember this very important lesson, no matter what the situation is, to give ourselves on loan that certificate of excellence. For us to remember that even though we can't do it in its ideal form, or whether it's because of the situation, circumstance, or maybe our just failings and falling, so that we have to be in the category of those who are lama nigaro. Don't leave us out. We want it. We yearn for it. We want it. And even though it is that it seems to be that we have to travel in some situation or in that situation, in some hardship, in that hardship, nonetheless, what we see is that the Ribbon Shalom, Al Pi Hashem Yisrael, Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, what the Almighty is telling us is we follow Him. We follow His lead because we trust Him. That trust is the trust that teacher gave to this student, that I trust that you're going to be able to achieve. I trust that you're going to be able to accomplish. I know that you have greatness in you. So Emir Tashem, by us not only believing in others, our children, our Talmidim, our Talmidos, but ultimately believing in ourselves, making the best of our situations, we'll realize that the best of our situation is the best that we could possibly do, and we are not expected to do better than we can possibly do. We should be zoiche to do the very best that we can, all time, anytime, all the time. And Emir Hashem, draw inspiration from this Parsha and from all the Parshas. I just want to take this opportunity to again thank our generous sponsor. Thank you, Linda, for your generosity, for being so wonderful, so incredibly special, inspirational to all of us. I want to thank you all for tuning into this Facebook Live. Thank you so much for your patience at the beginning of this broadcast, and for those who were on a few of the broadcasts, 3 times, third time's a charm. As you say, chazak, chazak, v'nis chazek. We should all be strengthened. We should be healthy and safe. We should be holy. We should be uplifted in Emir Hashem. We should be able to meet together in Yerushalayim, Yer Kodesh, Ken Yiratzon, V'nomar Amen. I wish each and every one of you a beautiful, blessed day and a wonderful Shabbos Kodesh.